Want in on the best transition planning advice that I've ever heard? Then stay tuned in and turn up the volume. Hey, I'm Shaye Wanner, and you are listening to the Casual Cattle Conversations podcast. And today, this is a solo episode where we're really going to dive into the best transition planning advice that I've ever heard. And I'm really excited for this because it's a topic that I hold near and dear to my heart, both for personal reasons, but also because really the American family farmer rancher is really viewed as the heart of America, but I also think we're missing a lot of opportunities in bringing in non-family members or people outside of agriculture even to come be a part of production agriculture, whether you're farming, ranching, doing both, whatever it may be. So that's why we're going to talk a little bit about the best pieces of advice that I've ever heard. Now, first of all, I want to say thank you if you're a long-time listener, if you're a new listener, for choosing to spend your time with me today. I know time is valuable. I never want to waste it. And I do everything I can to make these podcast episodes as informational and valuable to you as I can, which means if you have suggestions for topics you want to hear, you let me know. You find me on social media. My social media is Cattle Convos. You comment on a YouTube episode. You comment on a Spotify episode. You can do that now. You can leave a rating on Apple. You can go to my website and hit the contact us form and it'll send me an email. I can get back to you there. So just know that I do love hearing from you guys, whether it's something you agree with or disagree with on the topic that we cover. So before we kind of dive into those top 3 pieces of advice, I'm going to give you a little information on my background with transition planning, because that's going to help you see where I'm coming from with this conversation. So I grew up on a ranch that did a little bit of farming, and my parents started primarily with commercial spring calving herd, a lot of Angus, transitioned into a lot of Red Angus, because they, for all of my life, is when they started getting into the registered side. And today they are solely a seedstock operation that is producing registered Red Angus bulls. They calve in the fall, sell bulls in March, so do things a little differently. Now, they are not on a family operation per se, but they started their own place just a couple miles from where my dad grew up. And growing up, we worked together with my grandparents, but also separate. And that's on both sides, because my mom's parents are the grandparents who helped them get into the seedstock side. But my dad's parents, where he grew up on the commercial side and lived only a couple miles away from them, a lot of sharing of equipment, helping each other work. Really, we all worked together, but we had separate operations. And so that's my background. Because my parents, technically they did start from scratch in a way, but they don't call themselves first generation because ranching runs so deep in our family on both sides. So that's kind of my stance on it as well. And that's why I call myself a 5th generation, even though I'm only technically the 2nd generation to have cattle on my parents' place. So that's a little bit of my background there. But almost 3 years ago, I married my husband, and we are in his family's place, actually, which is about 50 minutes from where I grew up. So I can still go back and forth. I still have cattle at my parents', but I'm not there every day. My husband and I actually predominantly farm, but we also have commercial cows. So we're calving in a little bit in March, but mostly April and into May, and then we're selling those calves in the fall. And the operation we're on is a centennial farm. It's been in the family since 1914. So that is very much a situation where it gets passed down to another family member year after year after year. I was talking about this with my husband, probably a couple months ago, and it's not necessarily always passed down to a son. There was one transition where it was uncle and nephew, and that's actually why we are on here now. But it stays in the family. I come from different backgrounds of where I'm on a place now that continually gets passed down. We live in the house that every generation has lived in and is just modified to suit their needs. But I grew up on a place where my parents said, we have our own goals, we have our own dreams, we're going to do this by yourselves, and we're still going to be involved with where my dad grew up. So that's my background. And I don't think there's a right or wrong, because you got to do what works for you and your goals. We're going to talk about 3 of the best transition tips that I have ever heard. I've heard a lot of great advice from the people I've had on this show, and I would name some, but I know if I name some, I'm going to forget some, because it's something that comes up even in conversations that are not necessarily meant to be transition focused. But we're going to talk about 3 of them. This first piece of advice is a question you really need to ask yourself and be honest with yourself. Do you want to be on the family farm, or do you want to farm and be close to family? Think about that. Do you actually want to be on the place that you were raised, work with your family, go through that transition plan? Or would you rather still farm and be close to family, still be immersed in the community? And there could be a couple different reasons for this. I'm going to name a few, but it's such a personal question. It's something you and your own family unit have to discuss. And by your own family unit, I mean your spouse. And if you have kids of your own, not necessarily directly with your parents or grandparents right away. And I think about this from a standpoint of maybe there are too many siblings that are already back, and there's not room for everyone to come back and for the operation to still be profitable, even if it scales. Or maybe there's no desire to scale. Maybe that's not in the goal. So maybe from a business standpoint, it just doesn't make sense. Maybe from a familial relationship standpoint, it also doesn't make sense. From sometimes, maybe preserving that family relationship is more important. I think it should be more important. And if that's the case, maybe you shouldn't be working with your family. Maybe you need to distance yourself so that mom and dad can still be mom and dad, sister and brother can still be sister and brother, in-laws can be in-laws from a family standpoint, and you can have those close family ties. Because if you don't work well together, then that's going to be tough. And I really don't think that all family members are meant to work together, if I'm being honest. When we look at any business structure outside of agriculture or even, non-family businesses, part of that hiring process or selling that process to someone else comes down more to who fits the culture here, who has the strengths we need to improve this business. It's not, they're the son, so they're automatically coming back. Or, they're one of my kids, so they're automatically coming back. And that's something to keep in mind. And I think when I look at this question, maybe one of the roadblocks that I see and even I experience sometimes is, well, am I letting that legacy down if I'm not there all the time or if I'm not back all the time? And I don't think that's the case at all, because I think legacy can be passed down more than through the physical land or cattle and what gets built there. There's a lot to be said about that family legacy instilling in you the ability to go to another operation and make it better, or to start your own, or really do what you're meant to be. So I think it's important to remember that legacy doesn't have to be tied to the land. Legacy is a very broad term that can be unique to you, and you need to look at it in that lens. But again, so that first question was, do you want the family farm, or do you want to farm and be close to family? And be honest with yourself, and you need to pick what's going to be the best decision for you. Before we move on to the second point, I said that one's really targeted towards younger producers. And it might feel like this topic is, but what I've found in the reality is that there are people who are 50 and 60 years old where the farmer ranch has still not been transitioned down to them. So they still have a lot of the same transparency questions that many of us 20-somethings, 30-somethings, 40-somethings have. Some of these transition planning topics and questions are not age specific at all.
Folks, are you ready for more conversations to push your ranch to the next level and keep you thinking about how you can improve as a ranch manager? If you're thinking, heck yeah, then you need to join my free Facebook group, Rising Ranchers, where you can connect and learn from other ranchers and experts, as well as access additional ranching resources. You can find the direct link in the show notes.
All right, now the second piece of advice that I want to bring up is financially plan for the unknown. So I did a podcast specifically on this 2 years ago, maybe, year and a half ago. And what was really valuable about it was if you are in a situation where you do want to be on the family operation, but you don't have a timeline of when they want to transition. You don't have clarification on when, what, where. Still financially prepare to the best of your ability. Talk with a financial consultant and your banker and your whole team and say, these are my goals someday. I want a ranch. Ideally, I want a ranch here. So that way, when the time comes, if that transition all of a sudden becomes a surprise, if it happens 5 or 10 years sooner, you have some financial preparation. You have money saved where you can make smart decisions to buy into that so that it becomes a smart business decision. Because that's the other thing. If taking on the family operation is going to completely make you go broke and it's not feasible, you really have to be honest with yourself if it's worth it or not. So taking the time to have those conversations at a young age, even as teenagers, to start saving money and be smart with it, investing in the right areas so that it's available when you need it, is incredibly valuable. I can't dive into what accounts to put it in, etc. That is completely something you should talk about with your financial planner. If you are in the younger end, maybe start by asking your parents if they have anyone, or find someone yourself, talk to other mentors, even other people in the ranching or farming space that you look up to and respect, but maybe aren't tied to family. And if you are a parent of a child who is expressing interest in production agriculture, help guide them, help encourage them to save money, even if they decide that someday they don't want to put it back into the farm or buy the farm or ranch. It's just something that's going to be incredibly valuable for them regardless. And some people say prepare for the worst, hope for the best. Not that this would necessarily be a situation of the worst, but it's important to prepare financially, especially when we're talking about agriculture businesses, because land rich, cash poor, right? That's what we all say. So there's a lot of money tied up and not always a lot of cash flow. So helping that younger generation prepare so that they can be successful is imperative. Even if you're in the middle generation where you don't know what your parents are going to do, and now you have a younger generation below you showing interest and you haven't even gotten to that full state of ownership, help everyone prepare and be completely honest there. Now, the third piece of advice is one that I got in college, and it kind of stopped me in my tracks. And I think it's very common for many of us to go to college or go work for others and see that, hey, here's all these ideas. Here's all these ideas. Why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? And just kind of flood our parents or grandparents with ideas for the operation because we're eager and we're curious. But then sometimes maybe we get frustrated because things aren't happening and things aren't changing. And the piece of advice that stopped me in my tracks was you don't get to change what's not yours. That's simple. If it's not yours, you don't own it. You don't get final say in what to change. And I bring that up today because if you are in the position where you have a lot of ideas and want to change things, keep that in mind. I'm not saying that makes it any less frustrating, But in some ways, it can allow you to let go. And if you're someone who feels like you're taking a lot of responsibility and weight for how things are going, even though it's not how you want to do things, maybe that'll help you lift some of that weight off. And I think it's important to be respectful of the generations above us. They have more than put in their sweat equity. They have more than worked their butts off to build what they have, and it's theirs. At the end of the day, they get to decide what to do with it and what they're going to change and what they're not going to change. And that's just the way it is. And you get to do the same thing with aspects in your life that are yours as well. So just remember that, and sometimes put yourself in their shoes. So that way, I think that really helps you on the family relationship side as well. But it also helps you look at things in a different light of what is my current situation? What is my current role? Where do I fit in this operation today? And where could I fit in the future? But always remember to be where your feet are, because you're not in the future yet. You can prepare for it, but your role is your role today. So keep that in mind. Again, that third piece of advice that I very intentionally saved for last because it stopped me in my tracks was you don't get to change what's not yours. Okay? I could really go on for quite a while about this topic. We could dive into so many aspects of transition planning, family relationships, etc. But that's really the gist of it. Just to recap what we talked about today, those three biggest pieces of advice were the question to ask yourself, do you want the family farm? Or do you want to farm and be close to family or ranch? The second one, financially plan for the unknown. And the third, you don't get to change what isn't yours. So I would love to know which one resonated with you. If you have anything you want to share with me, reach out. I talked about that in the beginning of the show. Additionally, I have so many of these conversations in podcasts over the years, everything from preserving family relationships to continuing the business, to looking at it with a business mindset, to bringing in non-family members. That's not something we talked a lot about today, but that's something that fits into that first one, that first point about, do you want to be on the family farm or farm and be close to family? Because maybe a non-family member is the best person to help that business excel and improve. And there's nothing wrong with that. I gave an example earlier about how other businesses might think about it. So if you want any information on these other podcasts or topics, just send me a message on my website, on social media, whatever it may be, comment on YouTube and just say, hey, this is a subtopic within transition planning or estate planning that I want to learn more about. And I'll send you a link if I've got it. And if I don't got it, I'll put it on my content calendar and I'll find someone to talk about it. It's that simple. So remember, the best way to support this podcast and all your other favorite podcasts is to leave a rating or review, and better yet, share it with a friend who's going to find this information valuable, because podcasts still grow best by word of mouth. With that, happy ranching, folks. And oh yeah, hit subscribe and leave a rating or review. Bye.